If you've never hired anyone before, it can feel overwhelming. Most small business owners don't avoid hiring because they don't need help. They avoid it because they are terrified of doing it wrong. You're likely asking yourself, where do I even start? How do I know who's actually good? And what happens if I waste thousands of dollars on the wrong person? If you've never hired before, it feels like a high-stakes gamble. But here's the secret. Hiring isn't a talent, it's a repeatable system. In this video, I'm walking you through the exact beginner-friendly process for hiring your first employee, step by step. No corporate fluff, no complicated HR jargon, just a simple process that works even if you're starting from zero. Stick around because at the end, I'll show you the one mistake beginners make that turns a dream hire into a management nightmare. Let's get into it. The biggest mistake you can make happens before you even post a job. It's starting with a vague feeling of quote unquote needing help instead of a specific plan for leverage. Clarity is the magnet that attracts A players, while vagueness acts as a filter for the mediocre. Instead, ask yourself, what tasks are taking the most of my time? What do I keep procrastinating? What directly makes or saves me money? You wanna ask these questions instead of saying, I need an assistant. Saying I need an assistant is so broad, and it's also going to just attract a person that is literally just an assistant. I want a specialist. I want an assistant that is a specialist in something, whether it's spreadsheets, whether it's booking flights, whether it's understanding finances, whatever the case may be. I don't want someone that's just like mediocre at everything, because they're probably gonna be mediocre, right? They can be mediocre at new things that they're learning and starting to in the beginning, like, you know, obviously they're learning, so they're not gonna be great at it in the start, most likely. But if they come in and they're not great at one or two things, it's gonna be hard for me to really be sold on this person and to really want to invest as much resources into them. So instead of just saying, I need an assistant, you wanna say, I need someone to manage my inbox, schedule meetings, and respond to customer messages within 1 to 2 hours. Clarity attracts better candidates. If you're unclear, you'll get random applicants. If you're specific, you'll get focused people. Once you know exactly what you need to buy back your time, you have to communicate that to the world. But you don't need a fancy ad, you need a simple bridge to the right person. Let's look at how to write a post that actually converts. You wanna forget the corporate template you see on LinkedIn. A great job post isn't a laundry list of demands, it's a clear exchange of value. You aren't looking for a quote unquote rock star, you're looking for a specific solution to a specific problem. You need 3 things. 1, what the role does, clear responsibilities. 2, what does success look like with simple measurable goals. And 3, what hours and pay look like. No surprises and no things underneath the table. A bad example of this would be looking for a motivated rock star. What the frick does that even mean? Versus a good example is looking for a virtual assistant to manage emails, schedule calls, organize documents, must respond during 9 to 5 p.m. EST full-time for an $8 an hour base with potential incentives being unlocked after month 3. And this is something that I like to encourage people to do, because now you're giving them a way to make more money if they stay longer with you. I personally like to increase their base or salary, but you can create an incentive, you can do bonuses, whatever the case may be for them to stick around, because if they're good, they're gonna stick around. If they're bad, you should kick them out. If they're not showing up, they're inconsistent, the job doesn't get done, everything is hard in your life, you're wasting money, you're wasting time, it's just an overall bad hire, you need to get rid of this person as soon as possible. Remember this, simple wins. You wanna avoid corporate fluff, avoid over-promising, be honest and be clear. A clear post will bring you applicants, but quantity is your enemy. If you interview every single person who applies, you'll be exhausted to make a good decision. You need a way to make the wrong people disqualify themselves before you ever hit record on the Zoom interview. And if you're not doing this consistently, you're going to drain yourself, because there's nothing more draining than talking to the wrong people every day, right? This happens in sales, this happens with clients, this happens with internal team members. We want to talk to the right people. Now, of course, our life is not going to be perfect and everybody's going to be great. But if every day you're just talking to the wrong people, whether it's the wrong market where you're trying to sell your service or your product and you're just talking to the absolute wrong market, people that don't have a need for the service, don't have money for the service, or you're talking to candidates that are not qualified, they're very low-level people in terms of what you need, you're gonna drain yourself and you're gonna find yourself hiring the wrong person, which is even gonna drain you even more. I've been in your position when I first started hiring 5 years ago, and I remember this very vividly, having to interview the wrong people because I did not have the right systems, the right processes, and the right mindset in place to make the right call. So here's where beginners lose the most time. They treat every applicant as equal. In reality, 50 to 70% of people who apply to job boards aren't even reading your instructions. You need to build a gate that only the disciplined can pass through. Instead, add a simple filter. Ask 5 to 10 specific questions. You can create a form where they ask these questions. You want to include one hidden instruction. For example, like put the word blue into your subject line. Ask one scenario question. Right? An example of this would be, if a customer is angry about a delayed order, how would you respond? It could be any filtering question. What I prefer to do is having them do a questionnaire, submit a video. We have an AI interviewer that is specifically asking them questions, and then I give them a skill test. And then we do a multi-interview process along with a personality test. And again, this depends on the role that I'm hiring for, the level of this person that I'm needing, whether it's an operations manager or an executive assistant. It's a massive difference, right? I don't need to be as detailed with an executive assistant as I do need to be with operations manager, but I still need to be very, very detailed oriented, right? There's just levels to this. One person's getting paid much more, if not 2 or 3 times more than the other, which means that there's more value to bring to the table, which means that making the mistake here is much more cost effective than making the mistake there in terms of not just money, but energy, resources, and my time. So your filters show you who is paying attention, but they don't show you who can actually do the job. To find a true champion, a true A player, you have to move past the resumes and into the real world. The next step is the single most important part of the entire process. And the most important tip for a first-time founder, first-time CEO is this: never hire based on a conversation alone. People can be great at interviewing, but terrible at executing. You need to test before you trust to ensure you aren't just hiring a good talker. And guys, I hate to say this, but I recently made this mistake. I hired the most lovely person I've ever interviewed in my lifetime. I loved her so much, and so did my founder, who is even more strict and more anal than me when it comes to people. And guess what? We both fell in love on the interview. But it turns out this person was a great talker, but not a great executioner to the level that we needed her to be. And she got along with everybody. She was a great culture fit, but we ended up hiring someone that was not a good fit for what we were looking for. She was not at all a bad person. She was genuinely a great human being. Everyone got along with her, great culture fit. She showed up, but she was not executing at the level that we needed her. And that is okay. However, I wish we didn't make that mistake because it ended up costing us time and some money. Now, thankfully, we parted ways with her within a month and a half, but it was still too much time. You know, I wish we did it a little bit faster. So this is an important beginner tip. Before you hire anybody, you want to give them a small task, not a huge project, just something realistic. You know, for example, you can give them 3 emails and ask them to draft responses. You can give them your finances and have them create you a spreadsheet of like tracking of how they would track these finances. Whatever that task is, make it applicable to what you're doing. Do not create something out of nothing. If you're not doing this on a regular basis, if you don't have anybody doing this and you don't need anybody doing this, stop wasting their time. Give them a real life task that is happening in your day-to-day business, in your day-to-day life, right? I give salespeople, when I interview them, our actual script because I want to hear how they sound after the first interview. We do the first interview as a cultural interview. The second one, I want to hear how they sound if I gave them a day to practice. Now, of course, I'm not going to be like, I don't need them to give me 100% accuracy on the script. They're still learning the offer and everything else, but I give them real life examples because without real life, how can they know what actually needs to be done? That's not fair to them, that's not fair to us, and it's a lose-lose situation for everybody on board. okay? And you're instantly going to see who takes initiative, who asks smart questions, who overcomplicates, who disappears. Testing saves you from guessing. And when you turn this process correctly, you stop guessing and start leading. But if you're sitting there thinking there still sounds like a lot of work to manage, especially alone, there's a faster way to get to the finish line. So if you don't want to build this entire hiring machine from scratch, this is exactly why we built Remote Latinos. We take the stress off your shoulders by acting as your expert headhunting partner. We tap into our database of over 50,000 pre-screened candidates to find you the top 1% of talent in Latin America, people who already were tested, vetted, and ready to work in your time zone. We'll handle everything. All we need you to do is to review the candidates, interview the perfect person, and hire the fit that is matching your needs, your criteria, and your overall team and culture. Okay, that is it. So if that is you, head over to remotelatinos.com or comment hire to skip the learning curve and start hiring and scaling today. So you found the right person and they finally said yes. You might think the hard part is over, but this is actually where the most first-time hires lose their best people. Hiring doesn't end when the contract is signed. It ends when the employee is fully integrated and producing results. This is a result-driven world. If you don't produce results, I don't care how nice you are, I don't care how beautiful you are, I don't care. Nobody cares. Results are the most important thing in the world, and that's the world that God created for us. Because if we don't produce results, we will not be here. If Remote Latinos did not have amazing talent, it would not exist. If I was not a good salesperson 3 years ago, I would have made no money, I would have not been able to save up, I would not have been able to live an amazing life and start a business. If you do not produce results, you are going to be replaced by someone that does, which means that you need clear expectations, a simple 30-day plan, weekly check-ins, clear feedback, overall accountability, and just making sure things are being done. You want to tell your team what does success look like in 30 days, and if you can't define it, they're gonna guess. And guessing creates frustration. Guessing is where A players start questioning whether they made the right hire. The biggest beginner mistake is thinking a good hire will just figure it out. Even A players need structure, and they'll figure it out later. But in the beginning, they need help. They need someone to hold their hand, show them how things are done, okay? You're not hiring an executive, you're not hiring a CMO. And guess what? A CMO would also need some hand holding in the beginning. Maybe a lot less than an executioner, maybe a salesperson, sure. But remember this, if you provide the structure, they will provide the leverage. Now let's look at the big picture of what happens to your business once you finally master the process. Because at the end of the day, hiring your first employee does not have to be a complicated HR nightmare. It's simply about clarity and discipline. Get clear on the role, write a specific post, filter smart, test first, and onboard with real structure. Once you hire correctly, your business stops depending entirely on you. Your time expands, your revenue grows, and you finally move from being a doer to a true owner. And I can tell you guys this right now, it is the biggest gap between a beginner, mediocre, average CEO to a massive CEO of multi-7 and 8 figures is that they're able to hire the right people, they put the right people in the right seats, they hire the right leaders, they promote the right leaders, they create the right leaders, right? And then they're able to remove themselves from a lot of the day-to-day so they can focus on the business rather than in the business. And you can do this slowly. You can start with removing yourself from the stuff that you have the least amount of passion or desire to do. For me, it was back end. It was systems. It was things that are not having to deal with people, right? I'm still very much involved on the front end. I'm managing the sales team. I don't take sales calls anymore, but I still manage the sales team. So my next evolution of really removing myself from the day-to-day is promoting or hiring a sales manager to look over the sales team. We're not there yet, but that is the next evolution of what I'm trying to do here. So if you want to skip the trial and error, I've put together something for you. I'm offering the remote hiring blueprint for free. It's the exact internal checklist we use to vet our database of 50,000 candidates to ensure they are high-performing A players. You can find the link in the description below to grab your free copy. And again, if you're ready to stop guessing when it comes to hire, and you want help from people that have done this for years and have hired thousands of people, go to remotetinos.com or comment the word hire. We're gonna respond to you. We're gonna get on a call with you, go through a free consultation, see exactly what you need, and ultimately help you build exactly what you're looking for, a dream team. I'll see you there. Os.